So when there's a disaster, you have to make a transition after the disaster to the recovery. And there are two ways that you have to recover. One is with brick and mortar, and one is to recover the heart, soul, and spirit, whether it be of a business, of a family, of a community. So let's take a little bit time to look back at what it takes after a disaster when there are many things in play. We were so blessed that so many institutions immediately came to town. There was one community leader who told me he couldn't believe that as soon as the wind stopped, Canadian Mounted Police showed up in boats to help him. They were wise enough that they started their journey many, many days before FEMA actually started their journey to come down here. But the institutions like the Red Cross were absolutely astounding. One of the things, as we've started coming up on this 10th anniversary, it'll be 10 years on the 29th of August, that my daughter and I decided to do was work together as father and daughter to try to find those iconic moments, those epiphany moments at which different people and different institutions said, I actually have to come and do something. And I'm going to share these stories with you because in some of your lives, while you're very good at what you do and you're very happy doing it, I want you to keep your life open enough to realize that sometimes you're going to get a calling that you were never expecting. Now, with the Red Cross, the beauty there is people can write a check. And if you've ever written a check to the Red Cross, I'm one of the guys that got it. It is so humbling when your life comes to an end and you have zero cash flow. You can't go to your bank because the bank is underwater and all of your credit cards are useless. No ATM works. And a volunteer from the Red Cross gives you a gift card to buy groceries. And they look at you and they say, this is a gift from the people of America. Man, if you give, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for giving. Because it means so much to us. It made a difference in my life. And because of what I experienced, there's not a disaster that doesn't go by. I'm writing those checks right away. There were people here in town who looked around and said, somebody has to step up. And a group of them were the most unlikely women, known as Women of the Storm. The Women of the Storm were, for the most part, the spouses, the wives of some of the most successful businessmen in town. Most of them do charity work. They're not necessarily people who go to a 9-to-5 job. And they went and marched on Washington, D.C. to try to get the recovery jump started. Where you are today would not be recovered if these ladies had met at a coffee table in someone's kitchen after they walked through the floodwaters to try to make a difference. Churches came to the rescue. It was the churches that cleaned up everyone's house. It was the churches who communicated the need for their members to come down. And then we were lucky enough that we have some of our own favorite sons who were able to be a face for the recovery. Harry Connick Jr. started something called Musicians Village because as a musician who used to play in jazz clubs when he was just a teenager, those clubs that you see up and down Bourbon Street, Harry knew that musicians who live on a paycheck-to-paycheck cash life needed help. So he came down. Here are some thoughts from Harry.
It's a tragic time for us, and I think the more people that can help, the better. But, everybody has to decide for himself, what their conscience dictates,
Everyone has to decide for themselves. What does your conscience dictate when it's time for recovery? And that led to a huge building boom. And that led to other celebrities coming down. This is Sandra Bullock, standing with a graduating class of Warren Eastern High School. She picked up the phone and called down. She wanted to adopt an orphanage, and there were no orphanages to adopt. So she adopted a high school. Were it not for her, that high school would not have been rebuilt. It was one of the first to reopen because she helped communicate the need. Imagine every school in your town wiped out. And she was the star who came down to do that. I know we've got animal lovers in the room. Imagine how many pets were left behind. Because if you stayed for the hurricane, then you stayed with your pet. And when it was time to crawl with an axe and hack through your plywood and shingle roof to get out, maybe you got your dog or your cat or your pet up there, maybe you didn't. Many of them were swimming on their own, seeking higher ground, but an enormous number of people came down to rescue animals. And I mentioned the people who just find that passion in life, that epiphany moment. Liz McCartney and Zach Rosenberg are, I think, two of the finest examples. Liz was actually recognized numerous times by the White House. She was a CNN hero, recognized for her help because she gave up everything, she and Zach, and came down here and started a charity to rebuild homes. So when you deal with your clients after a disaster, realize that it's a multi-level disaster. It's not just bits of data, it's bits of their life. It's bits of their emotion.